Welcome to A More Brilliant Life. We share inspiring stories from people who hit rock bottom, faced their challenges, and transformed their lives. Learn how you can rise above expectations, discover who you are, and reclaim your future.
And then we helped with installing a disabled accessible bathroom for a paraplegic person there. And the context to that is that in Bali, being a Hindu island, if you're born with a disability, it can be considered bad karma. You can end up becoming sort of hidden away from the rest of the world and lead very lonely, isolated lives.
All right. Well, welcome Christopher Hill to A More Brilliant Life podcast. This is the podcast where we kind of reverse engineer how successful people got to where they are today, kind of all the twists and turns. Really, the goal is to show people that life is not linear. It takes twists and turns, and you rarely ever expect to end up where you are in life. So Christopher, I'm so excited to hear about your journey and how you got to be the successful person that you are today. Let's start kind of in your early life, or how everything got started for you, Christopher. Yeah, and how everything unfolded.
Oh gosh. So how far back should we go?
Let's hear where were you born? Yeah.
Auckland, New Zealand.
And how much of your life did you spend there?
I was there until the age of 12, and then we moved to Australia at that point. And so I did all of my high schooling was in Australia. Spent 6 years there, and including first year university, which that's one initial twist in the path. I certainly was resistant to the family moving. I didn't want to be uprooted from my, friendship group and wider family circle.
What was the age that you? What age were you when the move took place? Sorry, I missed that.
12.
12. You're 12 years old. Okay, and that is the exact age that we uprooted our daughter. Well, we have two daughters. We have an 11 and 13-year-old. So at age 10 and 12, we pulled them out of Minnesota, out of the U.S., and we moved to Costa Rica. And so I guess I would love to know, how did that turn out for you? Like, looking back on it, do you feel like it was a good experience for you, or are you still thinking that you'd rather stayed in New Zealand?
Yeah, looking back, I think it was a great experience.
Yeah.
Primarily due to the friendships that I created in that time, that I'm still friends with today. Was communicating with three over the last 3 days, from high school in Australia, and including one I'm trying to arrange to visit up in Europe in a month or so. So enduring friendships is what made it, for sure.
Okay. And so what kind of an upbringing did you have? Your parents are middle income, wealthy, lower income, or like what kind of an environment were you in growing up?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say sort of middle income. Yeah, mm-hmm. Middle income. My mother was a teacher, and my father was involved in IT sales, and it was that industry that brought us over to Australia. He got a promotion from his employer in New Zealand to being manager of a couple of states in Australia.
Okay. And was it a big city in Australia that you moved to, or was it?
No, relative by Australian standards, it was one of their medium cities. It was Adelaide, so I think it's their probably their at that point it was probably their third or fourth largest.
Oh wow! Okay. After high school in Australia, you went to university there as well?
Yeah, I did first year university there, okay. and then we the whole family moved back to New Zealand. And so then I continued my university studies doing a law degree and a business degree. It was another difficult transition, actually, moving back to New Zealand, especially comparing my first year of university at Adelaide University, which was much smaller and very social, and then arriving back in New Zealand at the University of Auckland, where the sort of cavernous lecture theatres with and me not really knowing a soul, was a difficult first year, actually. And I had, to the point where I'd actually reapplied to go back to Adelaide and go to law school there. But the way the structure works, I was only doing the business degree part when I was back in New Zealand and had to qualify to get into law school. And as it turns out, I did end up qualifying to get in, and so I decided to stick with it. And actually, I'm glad I did, and never looked back from there, because the law school was much smaller, much more of a sort of fraternity type feel to it, and yeah, ended up loving that and thoroughly enjoying the rest of my time studying in New Zealand.
So what drew you to studying law? What was the initial intention there?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what was driving me to study law. I think it may have been as simple as an uncle of mine who gave the advice of, if you do a law degree and a business degree, it just sets you up very well for the future. Gives you a lot of options, and that sounded good to me. He probably told me that when I was 14 or 15 or something, and I did do, even at high school, there was a subject on offer called legal studies, and I really enjoyed that. I came top of the class in that, and the teacher was probably the best teacher I'd ever had, and she was also encouraging me to become a lawyer. I remember she gave me a book at the end of the year called Reform the Law, which was written by an Australian High Court judge, and it was really about how lawyers can actually make the world a better place through helping to make better laws. And yeah, she hand signed that, was encouraging me to go down that path as well. So yeah, that it was probably those the teacher and my uncle which were influencing me to study law.
Did you ever practice?
Effectively, I never did. So that the story behind that is, another sort of twist in the tale, that I did work over one summer at a law firm, and again, really enjoyed it. And the firm offered me a job, and I readily accepted it. And at the same time, I asked if they would let me travel for about 9 months before starting working for them. And my thinking at that point was just sort of get travel out of my system and then settle down and become a lawyer. And that was very much something I was looking forward to. And then in my final year so I worked at the law firm in the final summer going into my final year of law school. And then in that final year, I won a scholarship from an investment bank, a British investment bank called BZW, which is part of Barclays Bank. And through that, I got a relationship with the offices here in New Zealand. And then they asked if they could send my resume to London. And I said, yeah, sure. And then in that course of those 9 months of travels, I was always intending to travel to Europe and London. And so I told them that, and they said, well, when you get here, let us know and we'll have some interviews for you. And so when I got there, yeah, I did. And long story short, I after one particularly grueling day of interviews, which is all done by Oxbridge graduates who I got the impression would sell their grandmother for the jobs that they had. And I was absolutely sure that they weren't going to offer me a role. The key director that I initially was in contact with said, yeah, would like to offer you the job. And so I was flabbergasted, but thought, well, if I don't accept it, I'll probably always regret it. So yeah, let's give it a shot. And so that led to the next phase of my life.
Okay, so you let go of the opportunity with the law firm and ultimately fell on this other opportunity. What made you apply for the scholarship, or what was involved with the scholarship?
Yeah, well, the scholarship, they call it a scholarship, but it was really purely just it was a financial reward that it wasn't tied to anything. I think it was $2,000 at the time, and there was no strings attached. It was just money, and so I was studying business, and so I think there were like 3 scholarships on offer from 3 different investment banks. I'm sure I applied for all of them, but only one. Well, no, one of them I won. And so it was, it was more a question of why not apply. Is essentially a way to get a struggling student to get a good amount of money at the time.
Why do you think all this opportunity was coming your way? I mean, like what? Why do you think you were so blessed to have so many offers, and what was it that you think created that, or what were the forces behind that? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I think that the bottom line was having a go and getting out there. In the context of the scholarship, for example, they said that I'll never forget this, because especially it seems ironic given what I later ended up doing with that bank. But they said I won it because, not that I had the best grades, because I didn't have the best grades. That they were good, but they weren't the best. They said I won it because I had a common sense approach to life. And as I say, I find that a bit ironic, because when I started working for them, I don't think they were interested in having a common sense approach to life. They were interested in just someone who would very much just do what they want and be the whipping boy and willing to burn the midnight oil, and give your life to them. So yeah, it was, as I say, quite ironic that was their criteria for me winning it.
So they saw in you basically a hardworking individual that they thought, yeah, okay. Uh-huh.
Well, I guess, but I don't know that was it relayed in the words that they used, because it seemed to be more like someone who, anyway, I interpreted it as they gave it to me because I had a good sort of balanced approach to life. Not necessarily, working, hard enough, but also taking the time to smell the roses and have other, extracurricular activities. But as I say, when the reality happened and I did end up working for the bank, the time for having those extracurricular activities became virtually zero.
Okay. Huh. And how many hours a week would you say that you were putting in at that time?
80, 100 hours was not unusual.
Wow. Like physically at the location, or also,
yeah. So all-nighters was certainly not unheard of at working in the office. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's jump back a second. So in that 9 months of travel, where did you all go? I mean, yeah.
It got curtailed slightly once I got the job offer. But I started in Australia, did a month in Australia, and then 3 months in Africa. We traveled through Kenya, Tanzania, away from Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa for about 3 months,
Wow.
and then Europe for about 3 months.
Okay.
And then at that point I got the job offer, and so had to curtail it a little bit. And so had a flying visit to New York, and then it was at that point I didn't even have a visa to work in England, so I had to. That was another reason why I got curtailed. I actually had to go back to New Zealand to get to apply for an ancestral visa, because I have a Scottish grandparent, and so through that I was entitled to get a 4-year work visa. But at that point, in the travels, I hadn't even bothered to apply for that. I was just entering on a tourist visa. So I went back to New Zealand and actually worked in the New Zealand office it took a couple of months for that visa to get applied. And then I moved to London for the first time properly with that work visa.
At what age then? How old were you then when you landed in London?
I think 21.
21. Wow. So and this is with a law degree, and holy cow, like you flew through all that then in your younger years. Oh,
early 20s.
Early 20s. And then, so how did you land on traveling through Africa? What did you, and how did you know how to travel through Africa? Did you have somebody that was familiar? No. Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, great question. I certainly didn't know how to travel through Africa. Again, I think I traveled to Australia. I traveled with a friend of mine from law school, and then Africa. Another friend of mine from university and church circles. He was living in London, and I can't remember now, but somehow we decided to travel together in Africa. I think it was the appeal of just something really exotic, but certainly didn't know how to do it. In fact, so to the point where how it did work was we met up. So I flew into Harare from Australia, and he flew into Harare, Zimbabwe from London. And so we met up there, and actually we had a tour booked from Kenya 2 weeks in 2 weeks' time. So we had 2 weeks to get up to Kenya, but we didn't have anything planned or arranged to get up there. But what we'd heard was that the best way to do it was these overland trucks that had finished the trip. And so the standard route is north to south. For some reason, they don't really tend to go south to north. Don't really know why. So north to south. And so what we were told was it was fairly easy to get a truck that was going back up with an empty truck heading back north. And sure enough, we did find one pretty easily that took us as far as Malawi, with a major incident intervening, and that was on the very first night that the driver said that he wanted to drive through the night and get to Malawi quicker, and we were just paying passengers. We had no say in it, so got our sleeping bags out of our backpacks, which were stored beneath the two wheels of the truck, and I then slept in the truck through the night, and then in the early hours of the morning stopped on the side of the road, and I think just to have get a cup of tea or coffee, and one of the other passengers in the truck, a girl who was traveling with her boyfriend, she said, "Oh, where's my backpack?" And then I that picked up my ears peaked up, and I thought, oh, actually had a look myself, and where's my backpack? And mine wasn't there either, and ours were the two closest to the hatch, and they weren't there. And so we had no idea what had happened to them. And the boyfriend, I think particularly because they'd been traveling for a long time, like 18 months, and had all of their photographs in there. And so they were quite distraught. He decided that he was going to hitchhike back down and see if he could find them, because we thought maybe it had fallen out of the container, or maybe even as early on as there was a campsite that we got our, changed into our sort of sleeping arrangements the night before. And so because he was going down, I thought, oh, well, I'll go down with him and see if I can find mine. And so we hitchhiked down, various commercial trucks took us down there, but we didn't find it. And so to this day, I have no idea what actually happened.
Do you suspect they were stolen, or do you have?
If I had to guess, I would say that at some traffic lights in Lusaka, someone probably just chanced their arm, and because the driver did admit that he didn't lock the compartment, and so just chanced their arm, and at some traffic lights just grabbed the two nearest backpacks. Don't know, but that's my best guess. So that was 2 days into Africa. I was left with just basically the clothes I was wearing.
My goodness.
Fortunately, my friend was a similar size to me, and so he generously lent me his clothes, and then really blown away by the generosity of other travelers. Actually, there was hitchhiking back up to meet up with my friend the following morning. A South African couple ended up giving me a blanket and some clothes that they were going to donate as they were on their travels. And one of the concerns I had was all my malaria tablets were in my backpack. But again, once we got to Malawi, there was a traveler there who had extra, and so she gave me hers. So it was a fascinating 3 months of relying on as I say, the generosity of other travelers.
Did you lose any documents, or like a wallet or cash or anything like that? Yeah.
A little bit of cash, yes, but that was more those sort of things, like my passport were in my day pack, which was with me in the truck.
And did most people speak English in Africa, or was there a significant language barrier you were dealing with the entire time you were there?
At that point, yeah, there was definitely language issues. Because I know that was 1995. I hear so we can look up my age. It was 23. There we go. There were. It was definitely a mix. In some countries that we're in, English was an official language. In fact, a good number. But that didn't mean that everyone spoke it. Certainly, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, and Malawi, actually, I think they're all official languages, but not their first language. So, still definitely language barrier issues. Yeah.
I'm always fascinated too, just by people's reaction to cultural, just culture shock. What kinds of culture shock did you experience on during your time, at least in your younger 20s, when you first appeared in the country?
I think what comes to mind was just an sort of explosion of the senses, really, in terms of particularly I'd say smells, but also sights that you never see, and sort of organized chaos coming from New Zealand. Things tend to be pretty orderly. You get to Africa, there's cars on every side of the road, and cattle that can be roaming around as well. So organized chaos was definitely one thing that struck me.
Sure. Yeah. I remember the first time my wife and I actually served in the Peace Corps in El Salvador. And I remember when we landed, and we took a bus from San Salvador to San Vicente, and it's only a couple hours, but I remember my hands just being white knuckled on that bus seat in front of me because the guy is like weaving back and forth. And it was like, I mean, looking back on it, my memory is like that scene in Harry Potter where the guy's driving the bus. I don't know if you can bring that into your memory, but then, at one point the guy like squeezes the bus down to like, inches.
Uh-huh.
And that's what it felt like. My memory of that, of our first few moments in El Salvador, just being so, yeah. And then, after you've been there long enough, like that, I don't know, your brain just acclimates to it or something, or it doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's. How long were you with the bank then back in London? I mean, assuming after your travels, that's when your time started with in the finance industry.
Yeah. I did 6 years in investment banking.
Okay, 6 years in investment banking, and then after those 6 years, what was after that?
Yeah. Well, rewinding slightly. Mm-hmm. When I first moved to London, I went into a roommate situation with a couple of guys, and one of them ended up moving down to South Africa, and we kept in touch. And so now, fast forwarding 6 years, he had ended up becoming a tour guide down there, and he invited me on a trip down to South Africa with him and his wife. Yeah, in 2002, and I had well and truly caught the travel bug by that point, so I didn't need much convincing to go and explore some new parts of South Africa with him. And so went down, and at the same time, we were sort of just tossing around different ideas of what I could do next, and especially in the travel industry. And I, over like a campfire one night, I suggested to him, what about doing some trips that combine sightseeing with giving back through volunteering? Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, I like that. And he also said, I've got a friend of mine in Cape Town who is the manager of Habitat for Humanity down there. Mm-hmm. Do you want to see if they've got a build going when we get back down there? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So he got in touch with him, and as luck or providence would have it, they did have a build happening at that point. So I was able to get involved in that, and it really it changed my life in sort of two main ways, really. One, in contrast to all that travel I'd done in that 7 months and all the travel I'd done whilst working, I actually, on this occasion, actually got to engage with the local people and hear their stories and gain insights into their lives and do a sort of a deep dive into the culture. And that just enriched all, the travel experience for me so much. And then secondly, it felt great to make a difference in the lives of the family that we were building alongside. And so I got thinking, well, I've learned some good business skills. Why don't I put into something I find a bit more meaningful and fulfilling and make it easy for others to have similar travel experiences? And so that was the genesis for what became Hands Up Holidays. And so the next steps was I decided to take a year out and do some more study. And so I moved to Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, wow.
For a year. And I studied theology there. And that was really where this idea took root. And because at that point, there was a few other ideas that were in the mix. Not my own ideas, but there was another startup, for example, that someone had invited me to be part of. So I was evaluating that at the same time. But this idea of travel combining sightseeing with volunteering really took root there, and I decided to do that as sort of the next phase of my life and career. And for me, at that point, it was really a calculated risk in that I wasn't married, didn't have kids of my own at the time. I didn't have a mortgage to worry about. So I thought, well, yeah, let's give this a go and see if it works or not. And thinking that if it didn't, then I could always go back to banking or, maybe law, who knows? So that was the thinking. And so that was, my studies was 2003 and 2004 and 5, I really used to travel the world and build relationships with different communities, in order to really just build out a portfolio of destinations that we would offer and ways to help that we could make available to our clients.
Yeah.
And then, as I say, spent a couple of years doing that, and then moved back to the UK in 2006 and launched Hands Up Holidays there.
Mm-hmm. So let's jump back a little bit. Like, what do you think was happening inside your inner world, just kind of like that made you want to do this? I mean, obviously you had a profound experience working in South Africa at Habitat for Humanity, but what was kind of going on in your mind, especially when you were at at your 6 years at the investment bank firm, that you think planted the seed for this, or like that made you want to make the change?
Yeah, I think a variety of things, from, as I mentioned, that my intention behind those, at that point, 9 months of travel, was to get trouble out of my system. But exactly the opposite happened. I realized that the more you see, the more there is to see. And you can just go deeper and deeper into a destination. And it's just so fascinating to discover new places and meet new people and so on. And so that I very much caught that travel bug. And then on the flip side, working in finance, it is a fascinating industry, but as I've touched on, it requires its pound of flesh. And so I wasn't finding it all that fulfilling. And so to be able to combine something that was fulfilling with a passion, just seemed the obvious course for me. And that, taking that year out to study, and gave me the time to reflect on what to do next. And as this idea really kept coming back to me, and that's where I wrote the first business plan, and it seemed to make sense. It just felt right in my spirit.
Mm-hmm. And were you aware of anything similar to Hands Up Holiday, like before you started it?
Well, no, and that was part of the attraction as well, was that I wanted to do something unique. I know one of the other ideas that we were tossing around at that campfire that evening with my friend was like starting a photography travel, whereby, because that was another passion of mine, was photography. So just trips where people could hone their photographic skills, particularly sort of on safari, but didn't have to be. But that had already been done and is already being done, and so I wanted to do something that was unique, and so whilst there's I remember my thinking at the time is, yes, there's a lot of providers, volunteering organizations where you can go. I mean, you mentioned Peace Corps, that we can go for a long period of time, and make a difference that way, and all absolutely fantastic. And then there are, obviously a lot of travel providers out there, but there wasn't the mixing of the two back then. And so I thought, why not? Let's see if we can make it work.
Are there other organizations that have sprung up since that you're aware of that are doing something similar?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. I think remarkably, particularly put it this way, I think there is a lot that target the gap year market, or the youth market. Mm-hmm. So targeting people probably like myself when I did that, that extended trip in their late teens, early 20s, who are just in between high school and university, or perhaps just after university. So that youth market, there's quite a lot of providers in that space. But we decided to make ourselves all the more unique by focusing at the higher end of the market in terms of accommodation, so the luxury end, and we've managed to carve out a really nice niche for ourselves. As far as still to this day, are the only dedicated luxury volunteer travel provider out there.
Wow. And so did you found it with your friend from South Africa, or did you really spearhead it yourself?
Yeah. I didn't found it with him. No, he was involved and is still involved in a purely in a guiding capacity when we send trips down there. But he wasn't involved in the founding of it. No.
So I'm curious, what does the average trip look like then, in terms of like how much of it is vacationing and how much of it is volunteerism and so forth, so on and so forth? Like, are most people signing up for 7 days, 14 days, or what's the average time frame there too? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great questions. Because most of our clients are American, as you know, not that many vacation days.
Yep.
So, the typical American vacation is, 7-8 days. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we typically run. And of that, it's typically 3 days of volunteering and then 4 days of sightseeing is the mix. But every trip is customized for the client. So it's entirely up to them how they want to split it and how long they want to travel.
Yeah. No, I think it's just such a great niche, and it's a great market because so many people, they want to give back, and they also want that, like, that hands-on cultural experience, but most people, they don't have a clue where to start. And you can sign up for tours and things like that, but you're still just interacting with your tour guide, right? You're not like interacting so much with the local people.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jacob.
So how many different places around the world are you offering your tours?
We cover Asia, Africa, Latin America pretty well. And then we do have some offerings in North America and Europe and the Pacific also. So I think in total it's around 25 countries.
Holy cow. How big is your team then?
We still have a pretty small team in terms of employed staff, but I think it's important. We have a big network of local partners that we rely on as well in each of the countries.
So looking back on your decision to leave, the investment banking world and going into this more fulfilling space for you, what are you most grateful for after having made the transition? Like, what does something stand out in terms of what are you most grateful for? Yeah.
That's a great question. I would say, I really definitely value the freedom that there is around, running one's own business. There's an enormous number of costs and responsibilities that come with it, but I'm very grateful for that. And then I'm also really grateful for just this opportunity to be able to craft itineraries for our clients that perfectly meet what they're looking for, and then enable mutual benefit. And what I mean by that is that they benefit from it and the communities that they're going to benefit. And I'm massively grateful for that opportunity to play a part in facilitating those exchanges.
So what is it that most people are doing on the tours? Is it a lot of like building houses, or what kind of volunteering is it?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a 50-50 split in terms of popularity between our building projects. which can range from small scale building eco-friendly stoves in people's homes, which can take, the beauty of them is that one, you can complete them in just 2 or 3 days, start to finish. And two, they have a range of benefits from, they replace the open flames that you find in traditional huts. And so by having an enclosed stove, you eliminate burns, particularly with young children running around. That's a risk factor. And because they have a chimney, you expel the smoke. And so respiratory problems such as asthma are dramatically reduced. And from an environmental perspective, they're a win as well because they're much more energy efficient and so require less fuel to be used. So less expenditure on fuel. So that's one small scale building project through to, as you say, building houses or even bigger. There can be sort of ongoing projects that clients can get involved with, building classrooms or libraries, that sort of thing as well. So it's roughly 50-50 with those projects. And then the other 50, although it's not quite 50-50, but most popular would be our wildlife conservation projects. So these are things such as, well, in Costa Rica, your neck of the woods, helping with at wildlife rescue centers where preparing the meals for monkeys and parrots primarily, helping maintain their enclosures, creating enrichments to stimulate the animals while they're being rehabilitated for reintroduction back into the wild. And just really learning a lot about the animals, going on the daily rounds with the vet and gaining insights into the different animals. So, yeah, as I say, those are the most popular, followed probably by being a reading partner in schools or after school programs.
A reading partner, okay, like basically like a teaching English type program, or
helping with literacy, English or computer skills, or arts, those sort of things. Yeah.
Oh, cool. You touched on a lot of the various focuses that my wife and I had on our Peace Corps journey. Actually,
right.
one of my favorite projects was we brought in these high efficient stoves because in El Salvador they're making the tortillas and they're doing it all over open flames. There's no infrastructure for natural gas or propane or things like that nature. So people are still using firewood, but the stoves that we brought in were, like you say, like the high efficient type ones that burn that firewood so much more efficiently that they produce less smoke and create less asthma and things like that. But these were like little self-contained units, and it was one of our most popular programs as well that we executed there. And people really like the stoves. Yeah. So is there always like a team leader then there with the people doing the volunteers kind of coordinating and helping? Okay.
Our model, I would describe it as a philanthro volunteering model. And what I mean by that is that it's the main benefit that our clients bring is the funds to get a project happening. And so that can be the stoves, it can be the materials for building a house, and also crucially employing local people particularly in the house context, to do most of the work. And actually our clients come to do the finishing touches, really, the last few days of work. And that's where they benefit. That's where the magic happens for the client in terms of that interaction and immersion and engagement, and the feeling of satisfaction of still getting to play a part in completing it and then handing it over to the client, with our local experts doing the tricky parts and supervising them.
Mm-hmm. And so when was Hands Up Holiday founded? What year did that?
We launched 2006.
2006. So you've been at this almost 20 years now. 19.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Congratulations. And what kind of feedback have you received from clients? And I mean, obviously you're still around, so the company is doing well. And have you had repeat customers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, repeat customers is a real the backbone of what we do. And obviously, the best endorsement you can get is when your clients book with you again. So it's been wonderful to have particularly our family clients travel with us on multiple occasions.
What's the youngest
And I'll
client
just
that you will?
youngest?
Yeah.
I
suppose some of them maybe aren't suited for children, or is that not?
Well, it's a great. I mean, yes, in essence, yes. But when we do have that sort of situation, then we typically will just arrange for essentially like daycare services or babysitting services if they are really young. But then from about the age of 5, kids can get involved with those wildlife conservation projects that I mentioned, and then they can also get involved in the communities, just focusing on playing with the local kids and getting that interaction and immersion. So, yeah, it can happen from really any age, but we would say typically from the age of 5.
Mm-hmm. So after you've obviously traveled a lot, you've traveled around the world. Is there a favorite spot that you enjoy the most, or do you just?
Gosh.
Yeah. Where are you now? Where are you living now? I should ask that question as well.
These days we're actually back in New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand again.
New Zealand, and favorite place to travel.
I mean, there are so many, but I'll speak briefly about one. It's a cherished memory that we did as a family. I've now got 2 boys, aged 12 and 14, and we went to Bali with them recently, and. It's an amazing country in its own right. Beautiful people, beautiful scenery, and lots to do. So we got involved with whitewater rafting, mountain biking, whitewater rafting. Did a cooking class. We did a hike through the rice terraces to beautiful waterfalls, all that sort of thing, and of course, fabulous beach time. And then we helped with installing a disabled accessible bathroom for a paraplegic person there. And the context to that is that in Bali, being a Hindu island, if you're born with a disability, it can be considered bad karma. Wow. And so you can end up becoming sort of hidden away from the rest of the world and lead very lonely, isolated lives. And so to be able to bring a measure of dignity and independence in this area that's so personal, i.e. going to the bathroom, is really powerful. And so I was thrilled that to be able to do this with my whole family. And so the kids were getting involved with things like drawing water from the village well and then carrying that water over to where the cement was being mixed by hand. And they would also get involved with that mixing of the cement and then ladling it onto the wheelbarrows and then wheeling it over to where the experts were doing the tricky parts. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and they also got on the end of a paintbrush, and because we painted the house for the family as well. And they also just played soccer matches with the local kids and got that interaction. So that's a favorite for me. Mm.
Very cool. All right. Well, final question, Christopher. What is next? What do you foresee for the future? Any major plans for the organization, or what's next?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I would say what's next is growing Hands Up Holidays incrementally with new destinations. But at the same time, we've also recently launched another brand. A variant on Hands Up Holidays, which we're really looking to grow, which is called Impact Destinations. And the idea behind Impact Destinations, in contrast to Hands Up Holidays, where you do physically roll up your sleeves and get involved with building a house or installing a stove or helping at a wildlife rescue project, as the case may be, with Impact Destinations, your philanthropic donation will enable the experts to do what they do best and at the same time unlock a unique experience for the traveler. So, for example, say on a safari day in South Africa, you get to witness a rhino relocation from a reserve that's facing a lot of poaching to a better protected reserve in Botswana. So this is where the guests actually hop into the helicopter with the veterinarian while he's darting the rhino. And then once the rhino's been darted, land and spend some time with the sedated rhino, and then see it get airlifted off to Botswana. So this is around leaving a legacy and being able to say, I saved the life of a rhino whilst on safari.
Oh, cool. Do they actually get to like ride? Or I suppose, how do you dart a rhino? Are you riding in a Jeep? Is it like a helicopter? Or like what are they using?
Typically a helicopter.
Wow.
So you go on a helicopter with the vet. Yeah.
Oh, well, I know I would love that.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting.
That's pretty special.
Well, very cool, Christopher. Thank you so much for being on the show and telling your story. It's such a fascinating to always hear all these stories of how everybody's lives have unfolded, and you have a very, very unique and interesting organization that I hope just grows and blows up, because it's really cool what you do. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, thanks for joining us. If you want to find out more about us and our mission, check out brilliantlifejourney.com.